1 second you're sipping space-grade espresso in your cruiser, boasting about how your hover boots don't squeak. The next, a jungle vine wraps around your leg, yanks you 50 feet into the air, and you're face to face with a man in a moss cloak, holding a handmade bow, asking if you want your spleen or your ego pierced first. That was the last clear thought Lieutenant Brax remembered before everything turned green, humid, and aggressively non-technological. 3 hours earlier, the Galactic Patrol's elite reconnaissance squad known as Falcon Unit had been zipping across the Tarshan expanse in a shiny stealth cruiser called the Pinnacle. Their mission was simple: investigate an energy anomaly on Jarn Prime, a backwater jungle planet long forgotten by the maps and intentionally left out of tourist brochures. The files called it a minor ecosystem zone with no sentient life and no significant threat potential. Brax, always the first to mock such bureaucracy, had called it a green pebble with vines and lizards. What the files didn't mention were the electromagnetic spores that devoured energy like candy, or the predators that mimic your voice just to lure you into their mouths. But then again, galactic files were about as useful as a foam umbrella in a plasma storm. When the ship was hit mid-orbit by a burst of radiation, it was as if the jungle itself had reached up and slapped them out of the sky. Instruments fried. Gravity stabilizers burped once and died. The Pinnacle spiraled down into a canopy thicker than a diplomat's lies. When it finally stopped rolling, the nose was buried in swamp mud and the tail fin was resting in a tree, whimpering. Brax was the first to crawl out, still wiping an espresso stain from his pristine uniform. "Well," he muttered, adjusting his perfectly symmetrical buzzcut. "This place smells like a compost bin in disappointment." The rest of the squad emerged, less stylishly. Sergeant Vesk, a bulky man with a fondness for grenades and zero survival skills, was yelling about giant mosquitoes. Private Luno was trying to reboot his AI goggles with a rock. And Ensign Quora, the youngest and most terrified, was staring at a tree that looked suspiciously like it was breathing. Within 20 minutes, all their tech was offline. Scanners blinked out, weapons fizzled, and comms gave up with an electronic whimper. The jungle had teeth, and not just metaphorically. A vine slithered into their perimeter and made off with their emergency medkit. When Vesk tried to chase it, he came back with his pants missing and the word, "dumb," scratched into his chest plate. Possibly by a raccoon. That was when Marcus Flint appeared. To say he appeared is a stretch. One moment he was nowhere, and the next he was sitting on a log they had definitely already checked for snakes, munching on a grilled beetle like it was popcorn. He wore a cloak stitched from moss and leaves, a quiver strapped across his back, and held a bow that looked both handmade and weirdly advanced, like someone had fused medieval craftsmanship with alien tech and thrown in a hint of madness. "Welcome to Jarnak," he said, chewing slowly. "You brought lasers to a bow fight." Brax blinked. "And you are?" "Your only chance of survival," Marcus replied, standing up. "Or your worst enemy. Depends on how annoying you are." Cora gasped. "You're human!" Marcus gave her a half-smile. "Don't hold it against me. I used to be normal. Then your bosses tried to erase me." He turned, not waiting for a response, and melted into the foliage like a ghost. Brax gestured for the team to follow, but by the time they reached the spot where Marcus had stood, he was gone, and so were their ammo packs. Over the next day, things only got weirder. Traps appeared where none had been. Footprints circled their camp, mockingly. A stick figure made of bones and spare calm wires dangled from a branch above their heads. And then the final insult. Their drone, one of the top-end XJ-9 reconnaissance models, lifted off for a perimeter scan and was instantly shot out of the sky by a glowing arrow that pierced it clean through and pinned it to a tree. "Okay," Brax growled. "This is no ordinary savage." Vesk snorted. "You think? Guy just 360 no-scoped our 10,000 credit drone with a bone arrow." Then came the laugh. Not Marcus's. Something deeper. The kind of laugh that didn't come from a throat but from the air itself. The trees rustled, though there was no wind. A shadow moved in the canopy, too big, too smooth. It mimicked Brax's voice from earlier. "This place smells like disappointment." Cora screamed. Luno peed a little. The Griac had found them. But even then, before the monster lunged, Marcus was already above it, crouched on a branch, bow drawn, an arrow glowing with static charge. He let it fly with a whisper of sound. The creature flinched just enough for the arrow to miss the eye but strike the gland behind the jaw, the sweet spot Marcus had no doubt learned after years of playing tag with jungle nightmares. The creature screeched and vanished into the underbrush. Marcus landed beside the patrol with absurd grace and said, "Next time, don't say stupid things out loud. The jungle listens. And sometimes it repeats." No one moved. Marcus sighed and offered them a beetle from his pouch. "Protein?" Brax took it slowly. "Why are you helping us?" "I'm not," Marcus replied. "I'm making sure you survive long enough to be useful." "For what?" Marcus glanced up, eyes suddenly hard. "For the war you're already losing." With that, he turned again and vanished. Brax stared into the jungle, for the first time feeling not like a leader or a warrior, but a child lost in a world that played by rules he didn't understand. A world ruled not by tech or rank or artificial intelligence, but by instinct, precision, and a man with a bow who had every reason to hate them. And somewhere deep in that green nightmare, something else was waking up. Watching. Waiting. Not all predators in this jungle had claws. Some just had very good aim. By the time morning clawed its way through the thick green canopy above, the Galactic Patrol Squad looked less like a military unit and more like the aftermath of a jungle-themed reality show gone horribly wrong. Vesk had somehow gotten his arms stuck inside a carnivorous plant that refused to let go unless it was bribed with fire ants. Luno had lost a boot to what he insisted was a sentient puddle. And Brax had spent most of the night standing guard with a stick after realizing his pulse rifle had officially become nothing more than a shiny club. Marcus, on the other hand, had built a hammock out of vines, slept like a baby koala, and woke up whistling the theme to an old Earth cartoon. He dropped from the trees with the kind of casual arrogance only someone deeply familiar with death and too stubborn to die could carry. "You all look terrible," he said cheerfully, tossing a fruit that smelled vaguely like regret at Brax. "Eat that. Keeps the hallucinations away." "Mostly." Brax caught it barely. "Where are we going?" Marcus shrugged. "Somewhere not here. The Griac has your scent now. We can't camp in one spot too long. They're patient, fast, and curious. Like cats. Except they don't stop at knocking things off shelves. They knock off limbs." Cora, who had said little since the encounter the night before, suddenly spoke up. "What is that thing? Why is it mimicking our voices?" Marcus paused, then sat on a thick root and pulled out a knife made from a claw longer than Brax's forearm. He began to carve the fruit with slow, deliberate strokes. "The Griac is the jungle's top predator. Not native. It was dropped here decades ago by someone experimenting with hybrid weapon lifeforms. Bioengineered nightmare, brain spliced with mimic spiders and chameleon leopards. It doesn't just hunt you. It plays with you. It learns. I've been studying it for 3 years." Luna looked up from cleaning his one remaining boot. 3 years? You've been living here that long? Alone? Marcus gave him a sideways glance. "I wasn't always alone. But the jungle has a way of editing your social circle." Brax shifted uncomfortably. "Your record said you were Kia? Last seen on a humanitarian relief mission in the Teleros system." "They lied," Marcus said simply. "I refused an order. Civilians were being used as shields. I wouldn't fire. They called it disobedience. I called it humanity. Command called it inconvenient. So they sent me to scout Jarnak. No backup. No exit plan. One-way ticket to nowhere. Thought I'd die here. Joke's on them." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the silence was broken by a squawk from above. "Sentiment detected. Please initiate IRO protocol," came a robotic voice. A small bird-like drone flitted down from the trees. It looked like a cross between a parrot and a toaster, with glowing blue eyes and a smirk you could almost hear. "Me peep," Marcus said, gesturing. Voice of reason. And sarcasm. Old AI core I found in a wreck. Rewired him into a jungle drone. He's been my emotional support hardware. Peep did a loop and landed on Brax's shoulder. Emotional support? You cried when your beetle on a stick fell in the fire last week. Marcus stood. That was a very good beetle. They moved out in a line, Marcus at the front, the patrol stumbling behind, swatting away vines and whispering curses at biting plants. Marcus navigated with the fluid grace of someone who had stopped seeing the jungle as an obstacle and started seeing it as an ally. He read signs in broken twigs, disturbed moss, and subtle vibrations in the air. At one point he stopped and whispered to a tree, tapping on it 3 times. The bark opened and revealed a hidden hollow filled with smoked meat and water canisters. Jungle pantry, he explained. Trade deal with the locals. Locals? Vesk raised an eyebrow. Marcus grinned. You'll meet them soon enough. They did not have to wait long. 2 hours later, after descending into a misty valley filled with glowing fungi and strange murmurs, they reached a clearing where a tribe of intelligent apes was holding a council. Not primitive apes. These creatures wore bone jewelry, communicated in complex sign language, and had better posture than half the Galactic officers Brax had worked with. One particularly large silver-furred alpha approached Marcus and tapped his chest with a long staff. Trial? The apes signed with a few swift motions. Marcus responded with a gesture that suggested affirmation, followed by one that meant guests and unarmed. The ape eyed the group and huffed. They don't look smart. Peep translated helpfully. He's wondering if they'll cry during the trial or after. Brax stepped forward. What trial? Marcus gave him a look that was far too casual. The jungle trial. You're outsiders. Dangerous ones. They need to know if you're going to be a threat. So you'll be tested. It's only fair. Tested how? Marcus pointed at a circular pit filled with mud, ropes, and small flying creatures that seemed way too interested in Cora's hair. Obstacle run. No tech. No weapons. Just instinct, teamwork, and common sense. Luno gulped. We're doomed. The trial began with a horn blast. Vesk immediately ran in the wrong direction and got tackled by a vine-covered monkey with a scoreboard. Luno fell face first into the mud. Brax kept his cool, guiding Cora through the maze, dodging falling logs, swinging across pits, and narrowly avoiding a group of exploding mushrooms that sneezed out sleep spores. At one point, Marcus jumped in just to confuse them. He triggered a trap that dropped dozens of tiny lizard crabs into the arena, just to keep it interesting. Peep provided commentary from above, complete with sarcastic nicknames and scoring updates. Surprisingly, Brax held the group together. He barked orders, took hits meant for others, and even hoisted Vesk out of a vine snare with sheer brute force. When they crossed the finish line, bruised, covered in goop, and short one boot, the apes thumped their chests in approval. The alpha stepped forward and handed Marcus a polished shard of obsidian etched with tribal marks. Marcus smiled. They'll help us now. Help us do what? Brax asked, still panting. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Survive. Hunt. Fight back. You're not here on accident. Someone sent you into this jungle knowing what was waiting. That means they're coming. And if they are, you better learn how to shoot a bow. Cora looked up. Why a bow? Marcus slung his over his shoulder. Because the jungle doesn't care about your tech. It respects silence, precision, simplicity. And because when the time comes, the only thing that'll stand between you and death will be whether you can put an arrow through someone's lies. And somewhere, high above, a distant ship blinked into orbit. Watching. Recording. Waiting. Night fell on the jungle like a trapdoor snapping shut. The air thickened with the kind of silence that felt less like peace and more like anticipation. Even the insects seemed to hush, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. The Galactic Patrol officers sat in a crude circle lit by faint bioluminescent moss, chewing on roasted roots, and trying not to think about the eyes they felt watching from the dark. Vesk muttered something about missing the comforting hum of his bunk back on the pinnacle, and Luno stared at a beetle crawling on his leg like it held the answers to all his regrets. Marcus stood at the edge of the camp sharpening an arrowhead. His back was turned, but everyone could feel his ears were tuned in. He didn't speak unless it mattered. When he finally did, the words cut clean. "They'll be here by dawn." Brax looked up sharply. "Who, the Griac?" "No," Marcus said without looking. "Something worse, the ones who dropped the Griac here in the first place." Peep chimed in from a branch above. "Incoming plot twist. Hold on to your pants." Cora frowned. "You mean someone created that thing on purpose and left it here just to mess with people?" "Not to mess with them," Marcus said. "To test it. Jarnock is a lab disguised as a forgotten planet. They send creatures here to see how they evolve without tech interference, pure environment. No cities. No satellites. Just predator versus prey." Brax leaned forward. "You said they're coming. Who are they?" Marcus turned, his face half-shadowed. "The Arborium Syndicate. A shadow faction buried deep inside Galactic research. They fund experiments no sane government would admit to. Genomic warfare. Biological assassins. Ecosystem weapons. They use places like Jarnock to breed horrors. Then they release them into conflicts they want to escalate." Luno's eyes went wide. "So we were bait." Brax felt a sickness rise in his chest. This wasn't reconnaissance. They knew. They knew we'd go dark here. Marcus nodded. "And now that you've survived longer than expected, they'll send a clean-up crew. Not to rescue you. To erase you. Your witnesses." Vesk slammed his fist into the ground. "Then let's ambush them. Use the apes. Fight dirty." Marcus didn't smile. "That's the plan, but to do that you'll need to become more than what you were. You'll need to stop being Galactic Patrol and start being predators." The next day was a blur of training and bruises. Marcus led them through exercises that had nothing to do with lasers or protocols and everything to do with listening to the ground before it spoke. They learned how to climb trees without snapping a branch, how to mask their scent using crushed leaves, how to spot traps laid by creatures smarter than some colonels. Vesk failed almost every drill but made up for it with sheer stubbornness. Luno turned out to be a natural at identifying edible mushrooms, although he did poison himself once. Cora picked up archery with eerie speed. Her first arrow hit the bullseye dead center. Marcus raised an eyebrow but said nothing. That night, as they lay in hammocks Marcus strung between trees, they heard the first sound of unnatural engines. A low hum filtered through the canopy like a warning growl. Brax tensed. "Stealth transport. Galactic grade. But not one of ours. They're jamming local signals." Marcus whispered. "They're coming in low. No spotlights. No comms. That's not a rescue, that's a hit." Peep whirred nervously. 3 drop ships minimum based on the signal distortion. And guess what they're not carrying? Mercy. Marcus stood. "Then we don't wait for them to find us. We move." What followed was a dance of strategy and silence. Marcus led them through hidden routes carved through the jungle by decades of evasion. The ape tribe followed above in the canopy, communicating with soft whistles and vine tugs. Brax noticed something strange. The deeper they went, the clearer the air felt. The jungle here was older, angrier, smarter. They reached a cavern lit by veins of glowing mineral. Inside lay ancient machines half buried in roots. Symbols etched into the walls looked nothing like human or ape writing. Marcus approached one console and placed his hand against the sensor. "This place," he said softly, "is why I stayed." Brax stepped forward. "What is this?" "It's a core facility," Marcus answered. "From the original Cedars, whoever built Jarnock left tech like this embedded in the planet. Not for control, for balance. The jungle isn't wild by accident. It's guided." "Guided by what?" Luno asked. "By old programs," Marcus said. "Algorithms grown like vines, learning, evolving. The Arborium Syndicate hijacked the outer layers, but they never cracked the core. Until now." Suddenly the wall pulsed red. Peep screeched. "They found us." Outside, all hell broke loose. Syndicate troops in adaptive armor dropped into the treetops like silent meteors. Their rifles hissed with tranquilizer rounds strong enough to drop a rhino in mid-charge. But the jungle fought back. Apes swung down screaming and hurling darts tipped with neurotoxins. Vines snapped out from the trees grabbing ankles and throats. Exploding fruit burst with blinding spores. Brax and his squad moved like predators now not soldiers. Cora dropped 3 Syndicate agents with arrows before they even hit the ground. Vesk tackled one into a pit of leeches laughing like a madman. Luno tripped over a root and accidentally triggered a trap that flung a stunned trooper into the canopy. In the chaos, Brax found himself face to face with the enemy commander. She wore Syndicate black with silver trim and a mask that showed no face, just shifting patterns. Commander Brax said. Of course they'd send you. The one who asked too many questions. Brax leveled his bow. Who are you? The mask shifted into a smirk. I'm the answer you were never supposed to find. But it's too late. The jungle doesn't belong to you. Or to Marcus. It belongs to the Syndicate now. She raised a device and pressed a button. Deep beneath the cavern something groaned. A massive root split open, revealing a metal chamber. Inside something stirred. Something with eyes that glowed like dying stars. Marcus cursed. They woke it up. The Griac Prime. From the canopy, Peep wailed. Boss, we've got a major escalation here. The jungle screamed. And the real war began. The earth cracked beneath their feet as the Griac Prime emerged from its metal cocoon like a god awakened too early from its slumber. It was taller than any creature they had seen so far, with skin like bark forged from obsidian, limbs that twisted like branches grown in pain, and eyes that pulsed with a cruel intelligence. The Syndicate troops halted, even their commander stepping back instinctively. The beast didn't roar. It exhaled, and that sound alone made the air tremble and the jungle recoil. Marcus didn't speak. He simply grabbed his bow and began to run. Brax followed without question, pulling Cora behind him as the cavern walls shook. Vesk fired his stolen Syndicate rifle once, watched the shot melt off the Prime's hide like raindrops on steel, and then dropped the weapon with a grunt. He ran after the others, muttering curses that probably dated back to 5 separate planetary dialects. Luno stumbled along, trying to keep up and still holding a pouch of poison darts like it was a comfort blanket. Behind them, the Syndicate troops scrambled, some trying to engage the creature, others simply trying to survive. It didn't matter. The Griac Prime wasn't hunting. It was cleansing. Outside, the jungle had changed. The vines grew faster, the trees twisted as if trying to lean away from the predator now loose in their domain. Apes screamed and retreated, swinging high above the chaos. The sky was hidden behind a green haze, and the air smelled of ozone and old metal. Marcus led them to a ridge overlooking the ancient roots of the central tree. Below, the Prime stalked the battlefield, unchallenged and uninterested in lesser life. It was heading for the core. If it gets into the heart of the jungle, it'll hijack the balance systems, Marcus said. It'll take root. And Jarn becomes something else. Not a test site. A factory. It'll grow new versions of itself. Smarter. Meaner. Brax clenched his jaw. Then we kill it here. With what, Cora asked? Our courage and bad breath. Marcus looked at her. With everything the jungle's ever taught me. And with people who stopped being soldiers and started being survivors. That thing is pure arrogance. It was built by people who thought nature was something to control. But the jungle doesn't bow. It adapts. And now, so will we. They didn't wait for a plan to comprehend it. Marcus pointed toward the ancient canopy bridges that crisscrossed above the core. They would use the terrain. The apes, understanding instinctively what was at stake, joined them. They began working as one unit, setting up ambush points, laying traps, weaving nets laced with sap that could harden into resin strong enough to pin down a tank. Marcus crafted a special arrow tipped with the shard the ape chieftain had given him. It pulsed with an odd energy. The jungle's heartbeat. Meanwhile, the Syndicate commander had not retreated. She stood on a crumbling platform with a strange device in her hand, connected wirelessly to the Prime. She was not merely its master, she was its creator's heir. Her mask retracted to reveal a pale face lined with scars and eyes that glowed faintly with biotech implants. She scanned the treetops and smiled. You really thought you could win with sticks and instincts, she murmured. We are evolution. Then she noticed Marcus notching the glowing arrow. Her smile faded. Oh no, she whispered. From above, Marcus leapt like a shadow reborn. He didn't aim for the Prime's head or heart. He aimed for the growth plates on its back, where the tech shell hadn't fully fused with the organic mass. The arrow struck true, and for the first time, the Griac Prime howled. It wasn't pain. It was fury. It looked up, saw Marcus, and charged through the trees like a thunderclap made flesh. But Marcus didn't run. He drew another arrow. Then another. Every shot guided by muscle memory honed by years of living and dying by instinct. Below, Brax and the others engaged the Syndicate troops in a final clash. Vesk fought like an animal, using brute force and guerrilla tactics. Luno, surprisingly, rigged an explosive from crushed spores in his boot's power cell, blowing a troop unit off a cliff. Quora danced between shadows, using her bow with precision that rivaled Marcus. Every moment they bought was a second longer for Marcus to land the killing blow. The Prime didn't slow. It crashed through the jungle defenses, crushed ape warriors underfoot, and swatted Brax aside like a doll. Marcus took one last shot and hit it straight through the eye. It paused. Then kept coming. The arrow had gone deep, but not deep enough. Then Peep dropped in from above, hovering with a final transmission spike in its mechanical beak. Boss, I know you hate goodbyes, but if you don't say something inspiring right now, I swear I'm detonating my own sarcasm chip. Marcus grabbed Peep, slammed the spike into the arrow wound, and yelled, Get clear. Everyone ran. Even the Prime paused, sensing something wrong. Peep lit up with blue light and said one final line, You should have stayed in your lab, loser. Then the spike activated. It wasn't an explosive. It was a neural override. Built from the core systems Marcus had learned to speak to. It sent a signal not to destroy but to reclaim. The jungle surged. Roots exploded from the ground, wrapped around the Prime, dragging it backward, tearing it down piece by piece, pulling it back into the earth that had once grown it. The Griac Prime screamed as it was devoured by the very forest it was designed to rule. When the light faded and the roots calmed, all that remained was silence. Marcus stood alone where the beast had fallen. Peep lay in his hand, dim, silent, but intact. He gave it a nod. Nice work, Toaster. From the trees, Brax limped forward. Is it over? For now, Marcus said. But they'll try again. Somewhere else. That's what these kinds of people do. Then we stop them, Brax replied. Not just here. Everywhere. Marcus looked at him, then at the others gathering from the shadows. Maybe it was time. Time to stop surviving and start fighting back. But first, they would rest. The jungle, for now, was theirs. Morning arrived slowly through the thick canopy of Jarnock, its light a pale green shimmer that painted everything in hues of rebirth. The air smelled like scorched bark and new beginnings, the jungle still humming with a strange energy that felt neither peaceful nor tense but aware. It had witnessed something rare, a rebellion not against tyranny, but against design itself. The Griac Prime was gone, devoured by the very roots it had hoped to control. The battle was over, but the story had not yet ended. Victory never came clean. Not on a planet like this. Marcus sat at the edge of a shattered root system, his fingers slowly restringing his bow. His knuckles were scraped raw, his shoulders stiff, but his eyes were sharp. Peep floated nearby, his lights flickering dimly, some systems still rebooting after the override blast. Occasionally the little drone let out a digital sigh, half snore, half malfunction, like it was dreaming in code. Marcus didn't mind. The quiet was earned. He watched as Brax and Quora helped Luno set up a small shelter using leaves the size of shields and vines that practically braided themselves. Vesk was sleeping face down near a tree, snoring louder than any ape in the region. A troop of the forest apes stood nearby, watching with silent curiosity, no longer needing to test these humans. They had proven themselves. But the peace didn't last. A subtle tremor rippled through the ground, not the violent, bone-rattling kind they had grown used to, but a whisper, like someone turning a page in a book far beneath the earth. Marcus stood up and narrowed his eyes. The others noticed instantly. Brax dropped the leaf he was folding, and Quora reached for her bow without a word. The apes grew tense. The jungle listened again. A faint voice crackled over a shortwave channel in Luno's gear, something they hadn't heard in days. A signal. Galactic Patrol Command. Luno scrambled to boost the signal, while Marcus walked over and crouched beside him. The voice came through more clearly now, cold and practiced. This is Commander Ilara of the Galactic Patrol. If any unit is receiving this, respond. We are initiating a full containment procedure on Jarnock. Unauthorized presence will be neutralized. Brax cursed under his breath. They're coming to wipe the place clean. Classic mop-up. Marcus looked to the jungle. It had no voice, but it didn't need one. He could feel its resistance, not in panic, but defiance. It had chosen a new side. We can't let them land, Quora said. If they get boots on the ground, they'll sterilize the entire region. That means the apes, the roots, even the core. This place will vanish. Vesk stood up, stretching and cracking every joint in his body. Well then, guess it's one more round. What's the plan? Dropkick a spaceship. Marcus smirked faintly, then pointed to the spire at the heart of the jungle, the same one the Griac Prime had tried to reach before its end. That tower controls the old planetary defense grid. It's been dormant for centuries. But the core is awake now. Maybe just awake enough. Luno perked up. You're saying we can override their landing sequence? Use the jungle's old tech to repel them? No, Marcus said. I'm saying we let the planet speak for itself. We just need to give it a voice loud enough to scream. It became a race. They sprinted through the jungle, guided by apes swinging ahead and clearing paths. Every root seemed to part for them, every leaf shielding them from surveillance. The jungle wanted them to reach the spire. It remembered Marcus. It respected Brax. And somewhere in its ancient algorithms, it had decided it no longer trusted the hands of its creators. They reached the base of the tower as ships appeared above the canopy, their shadows enormous and cold. The tower had no stairs, only a twisting spiral of bark metal that grew upward like a living staircase. They climbed fast, wind whipping through gaps in the spiral as the ships began to descend. Turrets on the ships rotated downward, preparing for a pre-landing sweep. The countdown had begun. Inside the control chamber, everything was glowing faint blue. The walls pulsed with the same rhythm as Marcus's jungle arrow, still slung across his back. Luno rushed to the console, hands flying over strange symbols and interfaces. I can talk to it, he muttered. I don't know how, but it's responding. Like it knows me. Because you didn't treat it like a system, Marcus said. You treated it like a living thing. The chamber's light shifted, and a screen emerged, displaying the fleet positioning. A single word blinked across it in a language that hadn't been spoken aloud in millennia. Marcus stared at it. Defend. He nodded. Do it. Luno slammed his palm against the interface. Vines wrapped around the control rods, and the spire let out a low resonating hum. All across the jungle, dormant towers began to awaken, rising from the ground like teeth from the earth. The ships above jolted, their engines flickering. Warning signals lit up across their hulls. The lead ship tried to fire first. That was its mistake. From the jungle's surface, bursts of plasmalace root energy shot upward in spiraling arcs, not destroying the ships but cocooning them. Vines formed cages midair, suspending the crafts without harming their crews. The planet had learned restraint. The ships hovered powerless, caught in a web of living technology. On the ground, Galactic Patrol soldiers stumbled from their dropships, stunned to find themselves facing not weapons, but walls of thorns that simply wouldn't let them pass. The jungle had drawn a line, and no one could cross it without permission. Back at the spire, Brax stared at the display in disbelief. You're telling me this place could have done that the whole time? Marcus shrugged. Not without someone giving it a reason. It never needed to fight. Until now. The final message from the Galactic fleet came through moments later, crackling and uncertain. Stand down. Orders rescinded. Jarnock is officially under preservation protocol. No further incursions authorized. Everyone in the chamber exhaled at once. The jungle quieted again, but not in fear. In satisfaction. Later that evening, they gathered near a small waterfall where the apes brought them fruit and water. The sky was clear now, stars visible through the parting canopy. Vesk roasted something that might have once been a space squirrel and called it dinner. Lunos sat beside a root, finally relaxing. Quora was sketching something in a leaf with a stick, a memory or maybe a warning. Brax turned to Marcus. You staying? Marcus looked around. I think the jungle just promoted me to official babysitter. Brax laughed. Then we'll leave a channel open. There's going to be more of these places. More syndicates. We'll need someone who knows what the wild really looks like. Marcus looked to the trees. Then he nodded. Just make sure next time you bring better boots. As the night settled in and the jungle swayed in a rhythm older than war, older than tech, Marcus sat quietly beneath the stars, Peep whirring softly beside him. The planet was alive. And for now, it had chosen to trust its guardians. No longer hunters. No longer prey. Just people who understood that sometimes, the wild doesn't need to be tamed. It needs to be listened to. And sometimes it fights back.